Looking back and seeing the consequences of his actions, which was a vast battlefield completely covered with skulls, weapons, and corpses, the protagonist, based on his immense experience, reflected on the fact that absolutely all people and creatures with whom he had fought, united by one thing, namely the desire to live, which was present in every creature. And if it were not so, he would not have had to put so much effort and fight so hard to reach the goal he had set for himself at the beginning of his journey. A black-haired guy with red eyes and a rather attractive appearance, dressed in a black cloak, walked down the corridor and found himself at the entrance to a large hall, from which a bright, warm light shone on him. After 99 attempts that always ended in failure, this time, he finally managed to make it to the last test. As he firmly stepped towards the hall's entrance, he told himself with firm confidence that this time, he would be able to see the end. And so the final 20 round finally arrived. In a vast hall, illuminated by a bright, warm light, in the middle of colossal golem defenders dressed in snow-white armor decorated with angel wings, stood our protagonist, who seemed tiny compared to them. After looking around and finding no one else, he realized that his opponents in the 20th round would be precise lithe giant golem defenders standing in front of him. Looking a little closer, behind them, he saw a door, which was most likely his destination. Realizing that the golem defenders would not let him through, the protagonist began to gather a dark red aura in his hand. The next moment, it formed into a large red side, the blade of which continued to blaze with it. The defender standing closest to the entrance was the first to notice the protagonist, who was approaching them with a side in his hand, which was obviously not a good sign. So, in the next second, he took a fighting stance and swung his weapon at the protagonist. The next moment, there was the sound of an explosion, which was caused by a decisive blow off the golem, which hit where he was standing a moment ago. However, its blow never hit its target. Confused, the defender turned around and found that the man he had missed was behind him, unharmed. The protagonist stood pathetically frozen in place and, in a cold and indifferent voice, said only one phrase, "Death Seal." As soon as he said those words, a red mark appeared above the head of the defender who had attacked him, shaped like an eye with a skull instead of a pupil. But he wouldn't stop there, as this was only part of his strategy. The protagonist pushed off the ground at an incredible speed and headed straight for the defender, waving his large side, which was glowing with a red aura. After catching up to the golem defender, who had no time to react to such a quick attack, he struck the side directly at its neck, on which a cut appeared the next moment. However, that wasn't the end of it, because after using a death seal on the opponent and following a successful attack such as this one, its damage would increase by 100%. At the exact moment, the mark above the defender shone with a bright light. After a moment, the small cut on the neck made by the protagonist glowed red, causing the head-off defender golem to immediately separate from its body. Without dwelling on the defeated enemy, the guy pushed off the arm of the defender, falling to the ground. Holding the side in his hand, he flew high into the air. He realized there were too many guards, and it would be difficult for him to fight if they attacked from all sides. But for such a case, he also had a trump card: Knight of Death, skill, which plunged everything around him into total darkness. As a result, the vision of his opponents was blocked entirely, allowing him to not worry about the numerical advantage of the enemy, but to strike unexpectedly without being seen. In the next moment, the darkness dissipated, giving way to a bright light that appeared to echo the main character's attack, which instantly destroyed several opponents. However, even though He could kill a few guards, their numbers were unaffected, and besides, they were even more eager to try to destroy him. As a result, at some point in the air, the protagonist realized he was in the crosshairs of two opponents, one aiming at him with a bow while the other was conjuring a magical attack. In the next moment, the golem defenders simultaneously shoot at the protagonist. Fortunately, he managed to dodge them, but his cloak was pierced by their attacks. Noting that the guards' attacks were faster, and in addition, they continued to attacking not only fire but also ice attacks, the protagonist realized that it was necessary to take the initiative in their own hands. And the best solution was to use the speed increase skill, which he did in the next moment. With a tremendous force, he pushed off the ground. he soared into the air. Thanks to the speed-boosting skill, he could develop so much speed that he could move through the air, leaving behind residual images that looked like his copies. The Guardian, armed with a bow, was confused when he saw this. However, he immediately came to his senses. He drew the bowstring, aiming several arrows at the protagonist, the tips burning with bright flames. In the next second, the arrows rained down like a rain of fire on the copies of the guy, piercing through them. However, these were only residual images that were meant to distract attention. The protagonist himself, while behind another destroyed copy with a mocking smile, looked at the defender, who continued to desperately release arrows. But suddenly, a bright blue light shone below him, which immediately caught his attention, causing him to lower his gaze downwards. As it turned out, a large magic circle had been formed right below him, which, by its very appearance, made it clear that the following attack would be powerful. But it was too late to dodge, and the next moment, a massive pillar of ice rose from the magic circle and trapped the protagonist in it. As a result, he froze, unable to move completely. The remarkable speed he had boasted about just moments ago had disappeared. Determined to break free, he exerted his utmost effort, gradually causing the ice to show cracks. At the same time, he struggled to escape the Guardian. Golems drew near the trapped hero, one of them wielding a massive spear, ready to unleash a devastating strike. The ice remained unyielding, but the cracks became more evident. Then, our hero's eyes transformed into a deep crimson hue as he activated another ability, Moonlight Obliteration. A radiant red light sliced through the ice wall that had confined him, setting him free. The attack not only liberated our hero, but also struck the Guardian Golem in front of him, revealing the true power he had reserved. Activating this ability also triggered a transformation and enhancement of his equipment, and he admitted that the situation had brought him perilously close to failing the mission. After spending considerable time and effort battling the Guardian Golems, our protagonist made the critical decision to conclude the encounter with a single decisive blow. The dark and ominous aura surrounding his side grew increasingly aggressive, signaling the impending climax of the confrontation. Recognizing that the situation was about to spiral out of control, the Guardian Golems prepared their most potent attacks, seals, arrows imbued with formidable magic, and physical weapons charged with powerful energies were all readied. Our hero executed a powerful forward stomp, amassing an immense force to bolster the impending strike of his side infused with an overwhelming dark energy. Our hero unleashed his Moonlight Obliteration skill once more, however, this time, the potent aura surrounding him was enhanced by another skill, the Red Moon. The resulting slash was similar to the one that shattered the ice but had a significantly larger area of effect. The colossal beings that once dominated the area were cleaved through like soft butter, their lifeless bodies tumbling to the ground. Our protagonist touched down, relieved that these formidable adversaries were finally vanquished. With the Guardians defeated, he advanced toward the room they had been guarding, delving deeper into this mysterious place. An odd sensation washed over him, prompting him to assess his surroundings, which appeared to be a new temple. Yet, it seemed eerily empty. Uncertain of his following action, he chose to approach the door at the far end, and as he drew closer, the magic circle drawn just outside the door started to respond with determination. Our hero positioned himself in the center of the circle, eager to discover what would happen next. As our hero waited, a hopeful smile played on his lips, wondering if this might finally be Theron where he completed the game on his 99th attempt. However, his optimism quickly faded as a notification revealed that only 1 out of 5 players stood in the magic circle. The harsh reality dawned on him that to enter the boss room, an entire party of 5 players was needed. At that moment, all the challenges and sacrifices he had endured felt like they were vanishing into obscurity as the notification informed him that failing to meet this requirement would result in his death. A golden light enveloped him, trapping him within a barrier, and his frantic efforts to escape proved futile. In his final moments, he cursed the absurdity of his last requirement, but it was all in vain. His body began to disintegrate, and he could only wonder if this was indeed the end. His expression changed as he realized that this was indeed the conclusion. The final second counted down, and the game notified him of his demise. However, in despair, An item called the Rune of Regression was activated. This last surviving hero would be sent back to the time before the first mission began, marking the 100th time Theron had been used. As a result, the Rune of Regression would now disappear. Still, our protagonist would embark on his 100th regression, starting over once more. The story begins in a square in front of a Korean palace that was located in the heart of the city. Today was the last day of the year, and many people had gathered in this place for the countdown to the new year. As it came down to the last 5 seconds of the year, one person emitted a bright blue aura around his body. His face showed signs of discomfort, and he realized that he had returned to his previous life. His hands trembled as he understood. This was the same time before humanity got engulfed in a cursed game. This individual clenched his fists, recalling that he had nearly cleared the game. He was already in the 20th round, and in his mind, he wished for the power to stop time because there were only 2 seconds left before the disaster would affect their lives. He also remembered what the system had shown him right after dying in his previous life. This was his 100th time using the Rune of Regression, and it had reached its limit. As the last second of the year approached, this guy, who would be our main character, thought that since this appeared to be his last chance for aggression, he would undoubtedly complete the game. He then prepared himself for what was about to transpire. Our main character also thought of the last requirement he couldn't meet in the 20th round of the game, which was to bring 4 more people with him. He began to survey his surroundings, wondering who would be the most suitable individuals for these roles. Several minutes before the countdown, another person appeared. This guy was his enemy, also in the city's heart, about to celebrate the new year. While they waited, one of his friends contemplated what he should do after their graduation. This bald guy wondered if he could become a delivery man. He then posed the question to his friend, Young Min. Young Min smiled as he answered, saying that he planned to be a gangster. His friends were taken aback, as they didn't think Young Min was serious about it. In Young Min's defense, he believed that people only live once, so he should do everything he wanted. Uneasiness crept onto his friends' faces as they realized that they should keep their distance from Young Min after graduation. Being associated with a gangster was never a good thing. The bald guy then asked Young Min what would happen to his personal shuttle after graduation. This question painted the image of a poor and gloomy guy in his mind. Young Min laughed as he revealed that he wouldn't part with his shuttle even after graduation. His friends joined in, finding this really amusing. One of them even added that he should play with that guy for as long as he wanted. While they were talking about that shuttle, one of Young Min's friends disclosed that he had just seen that person. This was the exact moment and the main character's body was enveloped in a bright light, the same 5 seconds when he regressed back to his 100th chance. Young Min smiled and confirmed that his friend was correct. However, as he stared at the person he used to bully throughout their high school days, something felt different. This confused Young Min as this person was not the same individual he knew. The main character's face now had a more confident look, and it seemed like he had matured. He also dared to gaze at Young Min. Young Min then commented that our hero was really different from his usual self. Young Min got really irritated as this was the first time that the main hero had done this. He was about to teach him a lesson, but his friend stopped him. They reminded him that this was now officially the first day of the year and he would have a lot of chances in the future. Their statements made Young Min calm down, and he decided that he would let our hero off the hook for today. The 4 of them then continued celebrating as they thought that they were adults now. They also greeted each other with a Happy New Year. But then, a mysterious voice saying that humans were interesting was heard. The voice claimed that humans dared to celebrate the new year even though they didn't know what situation they were in. And since the mysterious voice was heard by everyone, they tried looking for the source of it. A majestic creature with white wings and a white dress then emerged. This one was also enveloped in a bright light. Her voice also had a soothing effect. This one, who looked like an angel, then smiled as she felt amused at how humans were acting. She claimed that for their race, humans were just like monkeys inside their cages. All of the people who had gathered right in the middle of the city were captivated by the appearance of this mysterious being. They even thought that she was too beautiful. That was the same for all of them except for our hero. He kept his gaze on the angel and thought how she had finally appeared. He still despised this scene even though he had gone through this 99 times. The angel tried to stop herself from laughing but she just couldn't help it. She then claimed that all of them were trash for being so taken by her appearance. The angel also added that they should not think about these useless things as she had no plans to be around them for a long time. Her fascination and smile grew more as she figured that since these humans could clearly see her, they should also be able to hear her properly. One of the guys who grew tired of her laughter then shouted at her and asked for her identity. This guy even mistook her as someone who was just cosplaying as an angel. And while that guy was complaining, our hero kept himself quiet. The angel still had the same smile, but this time she became speechless. Her eyes then turned red and she gave a sinister look on her face. She commented that this scene was really annoying. Something then happened to the same guy who was shouting at her a few seconds ago. His head suddenly burst. The person who was standing beside him had blood all over his clothes. His body also started to tremble. It took them a few seconds before they processed what really happened. A loud scream was then heard along the area. Young Min was one of the guys who saw what happened and wondered what the heck was that. The angel spoke again, but this time, her sweet voice was gone. She then warned all of the humans to never dare to speak informally to her mighty self. She also added that these ones didn't have any right to ask any questions. They should also never act arrogantly in front of her, or else they would suffer the same fate as the previous human. The angel then continued her speech while giving the idea that humanity right now belongs to a much inferior race. Our hero could only sigh as they reached the part where the angel would explain why these things were now happening to them. With a brighter smile and vibe, she informed everyone that they would now be playing a game from now on for 20 rounds. On the first of every month, their souls would be transported to a new dimension to participate in a game. She emphasized the idea that this was the only thing that humans would do now for the following days of their lives. They would be focusing on completing the given quests. If they managed to complete all of those quests, they would receive some rewards and would be returned to the real world. Hearing this made some people confused. They thought that their lives could be spared once they completed the said quests. The angel read the same thoughts that humans had, and she chuckled as she told them that even if they could complete the quests, not everyone would have the luxury to survive. The main character continued standing there as mechanics of only half of them being allowed to survive were revealed. He was the only one who had a calm expression. As for all the people around him, they all felt as if their lives were about to end. The angel continued her speech and suggested that humans should not really need to worry as she won't take all of them. Our hero could only sigh in this situation. He had heard this one for 99 times already. It was then revealed that only humans around the world aged between 15 and 29 would participate. While listening, the main character thought they had never imagined playing the same game over and over again. Upon hearing the condition, one of the elderly smiled and claimed that he was safe. This action then annoyed the once age group was included in the said game. He asserted that it was just like pouring oil into the fire. Young men then intervened and stopped them from arguing. He reminded these individuals that they should not create any commotion, as they could end up like the guy who died. The wings of the angel then stretched out as she claimed that they should now begin. She also disclosed that the number of participants in the game would be approximately 1.8 billion. Her face became more excited as she informed the humans that since the explanation was completed, they should now proceed with the game proper. The entire area was then engulfed in white light. Everything disappeared except for the bodies of the participants. The main character was clearly included. The angel then revealed that the participants had just entered a place called individual spaces where they were the only ones who could see it. She then instructed everyone to shape their bodies to prepare for the soul transfer. This phase was similar to how players customize their characters for the game. They only had one chance to do this, so they needed to choose wisely. As for our hero, he thought he would choose the same appearance he had in his previous regression. The looks and characteristics of his previous avatar were now being selected, including his in-game nickname, which was Black Scythe. A few seconds after completing the customization, players were transported to a new location, An open field. The avatars of the participants slowly materialized. This was the same appearance the main character had chosen repeatedly, with black hair and crimson-red eyes. His build was also taller than his real body, marking his 100th time inside the game. Since he had the same body from his previous regressions, he felt like this was his real body, and he didn't need to adjust to it. As for the other humans, their avatars had also been transported into this new world. Some of them were amazed at how they had customized themselves. Our hero observed how these individuals had intentionally made their avatars good-looking, but this was one of the mistakes someone could make in the beginning. In this other world, the strong preyed on the weak, and if one's appearance was too noticeable, they became an easier target. This was a costly mistake because if someone died in the game, they would also die in real life. The main character's attention was then directed to a particular individual he had been waiting for. And it was none other than young Men, the bully who had made his high school life miserable. Black Scythe was somewhat disappointed because he had already anticipated that young Men would empower himself inside the game. When all the players were transported, the angel appeared once again and greeted them. She also noticed that these humans seemed to have grown attached to their new looks. She then became excited as she wondered how these handsome and beautiful faces would change after they experienced fear and despair. Currently, many of the humans who were in Seoul were transported here, and there would also be around 1.8 million people participating, which made some wonder why they could only see a few. The angel chuckled as she thought that this was what makes humans inferior. Her mood shifted as she revealed that this space was not the only one catering to all the participants. Other angels were also proceeding with the round, and without further ado, the angel began to explain more information about this game. Players could access a type of status window as long as he could think of summoning it in their minds. An example of what it contained was the one in front of us, which was the status window of Black Scythe. There was nothing noteworthy at this point because it was just the beginning of the game. Our hero sighed because all of his max-leveled stats from his previous life were all gone. The angel asked everyone if they had all seen their status windows, noting that it served as a reminder of how limited they were and what they needed to do to survive till the end and clear the 20 rounds, which was to get stronger. If someone could truly achieve this feat, the angel revealed that the reward would be anything they could wish for, and they would also be exempted from the games that would be played. Other people began to contemplate the things they desired. The reward was indeed tempting, and to kick things off, the angel smiled as she revealed that she had prepared something for everyone today. The players accessed their inventories and found something notable inside. A random rune. The angel explained that this rune could only be used once, and players could use it even if they were just level 1. This was the only item given to them at the beginning. Players could also consume this item once they thought of the word use in their minds. Young Min was the first to use it, and his face displayed amazement at what they received. The angel laughed once again as she noticed that some of the players were not pleased with what they got from the rune. She then explained that they couldn't do anything about it, but accept it, as it was their luck. After explaining the runes, she snapped her fingers as they were about to get into the real thing. Light particles began to materialize all over the place. All of the players were then notified by a message about their first mission, which was something that was quite anticipated for players at the beginning of the game. All they needed to do was to eliminate 100 goblins each. Out of all the participants worldwide, only half of them would be permitted to survive after this round. A few moments later, the first goblin was summoned. The players observed this and commented that it really resembled a virtual reality game. The angel then cautioned everyone not to get too excited because she had just summoned a whole group of them at once. The entire area started to fill with these rays of light. The calm expressions on their face faded, and panic began to set in as they saw the number of goblins in front of them. With a more sinister expression combined with an ominous aura, the angel announced the battle between 10,000 humans and 50,000 goblins. This would be a fight to the death. As soon as the statement ended, the horde of goblins started advancing towards the humans. The speed of these creatures was remarkably fast. Some players didn't know how to react, but as most of them began to step backward, notable footsteps were heard. Black Scythe stepped in front of the battle without any fear at all. The people behind our hero started to wonder what this guy was thinking. Facing the goblins head-on was just too perilous. As the monsters drew closer, the calm expression Black Side had was replaced with a murderous look. And our hero dashed toward the goblin and executed a powerful kick. He realized that when someone was part of a group, the first impression was crucial. What he had just done shocked all these individuals. He wanted to imprint the image of his power on their minds. And the best way to achieve this was by defeating the very first goblin with that powerful kick. The goblin's body was sent a few meters away. Then, he noticed a dagger that was lying in the grass. Ryumin then picked up the dagger that the monster had been holding. In his mind, he truly needed to avoid being overwhelmed by these pesky foes, so he had to show them how strong he was. Furthermore, there was still one more essential thing he needed to accomplish, getting the attention of the angel assigned to their group. The angel, who currently looked amused at what our hero had displayed, left Black Sight with no other option but to put on a beautiful performance in front of everyone. The two goblins that dashed in his way were instantly slashed. Other players were now wondering if he was some sort of a secret agent in real life. They also found his nickname to be really cool. Since Ryumin had demonstrated his strength against the goblins, they got the idea that perhaps these monsters were the weakest adversaries they could face. Some of them became overconfident, thinking they could easily defeat these creatures. But their perception quickly changed as one goblin managed to get close and take down one player with just one attack. The reality of their situation had finally sunk in. This was not the moment to relax and expect an easy survival. As that person was being killed by the goblin, everyone started to disperse and run for their lives. Our hero caught a glimpse of how the others were faring. This scene was one of the things he considered as the greetings of Inferno. At this point, no one could mistake this for a game anymore. The only thought on people's minds was the concept of survival. The once carefree humans who had dominated the food chain were now the prey. The first instinct upon encountering this danger was to run away with no sense of direction. Ryumin remembered that this was the same mistake he had made the first time. It was only after the second regression that he finally faced the harsh reality, understanding that no matter how fast someone could run, they could never escape this dimension. The lady was not aware that there was an invisible wall hindering them from covering more distance from the goblins. She stopped in her tracks and wondered what to do next. This situation was also a wake-up call for modern people. With everything easily provided by technology, their instincts for killing other creatures were almost non-existent. Some of them hesitated to make their first kill. However, having second thoughts inside this game could prove fatal, because it gave the monsters the slightest chance to turn things around and launch a counterattack. A few minutes passed and some of the humans had pushed beyond their limits, yet they still found themselves in a dire situation. The angel continued to watch the fight with amusement. She mentioned that goblins might be the size of a human child, but players would still have a difficult time killing them, especially when they come in swarms and armed with daggers. But as most of the people were struggling, a certain individual caught her attention, and that was our hero. This made her wonder about this human. The angel then checked his progress and found out that Ryumin had already defeated 70 goblins. It annoyed her because the system could only show the progress of this player to her, nothing more, nothing less. But she decided to let this matter go because she didn't expect that some of the humans would have someone as noble as her be interested in watching over them. The battle against these creatures continued, and every time a player defeated one goblin, they would gain experience points and gold, eventually allowing them to level up. As for Black Side's progress, he had now eliminated 75 goblins and continued to showcase his remarkable skills while dodging all of the goblins' weapons. Another horde was now rushing towards him, but every single one of them met a quick and powerful thrust from his dagger. His hand was now tainted by the monster's blood, which made some hesitate from attacking and approaching him. However, our hero didn't show any mercy and continued the onslaught. One attack was enough to defeat them. His eyes grew more intimidating as he looked for more goblins to slay. This was also the time when Ryumin noticed that the goblins were retreating from him. Since no one was attacking him, he thought he could use this time to take a breather. First, he checked his status window once again and revealed that he was now level 4. He also had 6 extra stat points. Players would receive 2 different stat points when they level up. And our hero allocated all of them towards his agility stat. That was because this stat would not only increase his dodge rate but also boost his attack and movement speed. Nothing was more important than agility in the beginning. After that, Ryumin thought that with these kind of progress, he would surely get the attention of the angel. Now, he wondered how he should end the first mission. One circling dagger was then thrown and landed on one of the goblins. Black Scythe addressed the goblins once again and asked if they would really not come at him. This provocation proved to be ineffective as the goblins were still not moving from their positions. Ryumin sighed as he realized this. He knew that he had no other choice but, in a swift movement, Black Scythe vanished from his position. He had already traversed the distance across this group of goblins just to retrieve the dagger. He threw the dagger at them. These monsters took a few seconds to realize what had happened. But as they turned around, they were met with this devastating ground slash. All of them were cut in half. Killing the group of goblins sealed the deal for our hero and he leveled up once again. The system also notified him that he had just completed their requirement for the first mission. An array of golden light then surrounded him, confirming Faith was done. Ryumin thought that the first round had always been this easy. All he needed to do was to exert additional effort to get the attention of the angel. After that, he was congratulated by the system for being the first one to complete the quest in their given zone. He also secured first place across all the zones. His total time was 10 minutes and 21 seconds. He had a satisfied smile on his face as he managed to get the rank 1 again. This would prove to be useful because if top 3 players who finished each mission would receive some sort of reward. His reward for being the rank 1 in his given zone was the lowest rank rare weapon selection coupon. As for their reward for ranking first across all the zones, our hero got a special reward selection box. These items would clearly ensure a huge advantage against the other players. In the beginning, the first one that Ryumin decided to use was the weapon coupon. The system then showed him a list of fallen rare weapons to choose from. He felt a bit ashamed as he was now back to using these low-ranked weapons, but he was still thankful to have them. Ryumin then clicked on one of the choices, and the weapon he chose was the stiletto, considered the best dagger available to beginners, with an attack power of 15 and an additional agility stat. After receiving the item, our hero threw the dagger he had obtained from the goblins. As for the other reward, he planned on opening it later. While he was busy checking all the rewards he had received, the other players were still being hunted by the goblins. He also checked his status window and noticed something different this time. He was referring to the title he had received earlier, called Last Time Regressor. He thought that he had never seen this in the past 99 tries. Back when they were asked to use the rune, he had also consumed his. And the rune he got was the rune of regression, which was the same thing he got from the very first time. This was the item that allowed him to reach up to this point. Upon consuming the rune, it was immediately imprinted into his body. The only thing that was different now was the error that the rune was receiving. Ryumin had already expected this because he knew that he couldn't regress infinitely. The rune confirmed that this was his 100th regression, catching the attention of our hero. This was also the time he got the title of Last Time Regressor. In this game, titles swear superordinate concepts of runes. Last Time Regressor could only be obtained at the 100th regression of a certain individual and it allowed the user to stay in soul form for 1 minute. The user could then be resurrected at any desired point in time with his health restored. He remembered that the skill of resurrection could only be seen as the priest's skill and even that only restored up to 30% of their health. Ryumin figured that the title he got this time could really be proven to be useful and having something like this at his disposal would help him clear the game. Ryumin looked at his information window with interest and thought Faith had really gone through something unique. And the fact that this was his last regression was something he should have kept secret from the others, especially the angels. Hence, he carefully made sure that this property had a private status. Even if it was hidden, it still had an effect. He had a lot of free time since he finished the quest much earlier than the others, and now he could stretch out and relax a little. He looked around the battlefield to see how the others who were about to complete the quest were doing. He was especially interested in how Ryumin was doing. Since those who had passed the round could not go outside the area, his movements were restricted, and he could only watch as one spitter enemy. The clumsy figure could be seen in the distance and fought fiercely from behind the backs of others. This calmed him down a bit, for he knew that just like the previous times, Ryumin would survive not only the first round but also the fifth round. And it looked like he would survive this time, too. He had a plan on how to use it in future. More and more barriers began to appear on the battlefield, separating the players who completed the task from the rest. As a result, the number of goblins had noticeably decreased over time, although their numbers were still higher than humans. Moreover, humans had better stats than goblins and could increase their stats by killing them, so it was only natural that the players would gain the upper hand. So the angel decided to intervene, reasoning that it was getting boring to watch. She announced to them that it was her fault that the number of goblins was decreasing. The battlefield was strewn with the corpses of humans and goblins. Angel asked them if they shouldered more fun and began to flap her wings. The poor people whose loved ones were dying in front of their eyes could not understand her humor. The fluttering of her wings seemed to be a signal as the corpses scattered in the meadow began to disappear. It was only natural that people were puzzled. They asked each other what was going on. Where are the bodies disappearing to? And as soon as the corpses disappeared, a new batch of 50 goblins appeared with a yellow flash. They immediately rushed furiously at the remaining players. The humans had to take up arms again to survive or die. They were too young to scream like this and run for their lives in a bloody place like Athens. The angel announced to them with a frightening smile that she had given them a free refill of fun and now it would be enough for them. And then ordered the goblins to kill them. The survivors desperately fought off the attack, saving their lives. It was a bloody massacre in which sweat and blood, human and goblin, flowed in rivers. Gradually, in this deadly battle, the number of players who completed the quest grew and reached 10 to 21. As the number of those who completed the quest increased, the goblins exponentially became less and less. Each time, the angel removed the corpses and added new goblins. The number of those who completed the quest grew to 2,129. It had been like this for about 5 hours. Ryumin sat on the ground inside his barrier and dozed off out of boredom. What could not be said about the other players, who were very worried about their friends who had not yet finished the quest and were making futile attempts to get out of the barrier and help them. And they were downcast as they watched the goblins kill their friends and acquaintances one by one. Angel smiled her deadly smile as the number of those who had completed the quest reached 3,533. She was anticipating the moment when half of the players would complete the quest. Suddenly, Ryumin opened his eyes like an alarm clock and looked around. He knew it would be over soon. Finally, the number of those who had completed the quest reached the number 5,143 and that was exactly half of all the players. The goblins that had filled the meadow suddenly disappeared without a trace. It seemed like it was a dream. And the players waved their daggers, not realizing where the goblins had suddenly gone. Angel addressed all the people at the location in her loud voice, announcing that half of the applicants had passed and that meant that the quest was over. Angel spoke as if she was sorry for this, but that was absolutely not the case. Next, she said that, unfortunately, the rest had to be destroyed because I thought it was the rules of the game. The unfortunate that did not have time to complete the quest did not understand why they all this. Some were missing literally one goblin. They asked to wait a little longer and give them another chance. But their cries were silenced in an instant, and those who could not complete the quest were scattered like dust. It was about 3,000 people. 3,000 people disappeared without a trace. The remaining 2,000 were killed by the goblins. The players who passed and watched from the barriers swallowed their parched saliva. If they hadn't completed the task earlier, they, too, could have been destroyed in a similar manner. They all had shock and confusion displayed on their frightened faces. The angel noticed this and ironically asked them what was wrong with their faces. Shouldn't they have been happy to be alive? But not getting an answer to her questions, she said that it didn't matter anyway because they had all made it through, and now they could go home. At the mention of going home, the tension in the air among the players dissipated, replaced by a collective sigh of relief. Angel congratulated them on their success in the first round and voiced her hope that they would do better in the second round, as it would be much harder than the first. She barely managed to hide her devilish grin with her hand. But that wasn't all, and she offered them one last look at the round results and player rankings. The results of the first round in all areas appeared in front of all the players, and of course, Black Reaper was in first place with a significant lead over the rest. Also, a notification then appeared that Black Reaper was currently ranked first in both the overall rankings and his current area. Another notification appeared in front of Ryu Min, which contained information about rewards. He received a coupon for the lowest ranked rare weapon and a special box with a reward option. He was also to receive 1,000 gold for completing the quest. It was also explained to him that he would be able to buy items with the gold he earned for successfully completing the quest. But he would only be able to access the store when he reached level 10. Ryumin looked around at the many people now staring at him. Some people looked at him with envy, but most of them cast glances full of reverence for his achievements. The gap between Ryumin's achievement time and second place was huge, so this was even more impressive. It wasn't just people who were surprised. He smugly thought that it seemed like everyone now knew that he was in the first place. The angel then butted in and commented that she had never expected that the one who would be ranked first would be inside her zone. She then addressed our hero and wanted him to answer her question. This holy being asked how he became this strong and inquired if he received a powerful rune. But before she could finish her question, she stopped herself and figured that this question was a mistake. Ryumin then teased her and asked if she could see his rune by looking in his status window. The angel panicked and then lied about this information, pretending that she could also say the rune that our hero received. But the only one who knew that this was just an alibi was Black Scythe himself, who just smiled at her and didn't answer her questions. To turn things around, our hero got her attention and asked for a favor. This situation was now becoming more unpredictable for the angel, and she had no idea that this man had lived through the same situation 99 times. Ryumin then held his head up high as he revealed his dissatisfaction with the reward he got for getting first place on this mission. He commented that they were too stingy. This statement shocked everyone around him, as they didn't expect someone to even dare to ask for more rewards in front of this merciless angel. As expected, the mood of the angel turned sour as she asked our hero what he just said. But this scene didn't intimidate him even for just a bit. He even complied and repeated the same words he said a while ago. He would like to have better rewards. His smug attitude was slowly getting on the nerves of this angel. But as everyone was already panicking, in the back of their minds, these two just stared at each other. As for this angel, she wondered if this human was already underestimating her just because he ranked first in this mission. She couldn't accept the fact that a mere human dared to ask her for some demands. She then raised her hand as she planned to blow him up, but she stopped as she remembered that she had just used that authority previously. This meant that she would not be able to kill our hero. Another idea came into her mind as she was staring at Ryumin. She knew that this should be enough to get rid of him. The angel then slowly approached our hero while repeating his demand. She even descended and walked on the ground. She explained that usually, things like that would be rejected right away, but she informed our hero that she would think about it, and that would require them to talk in private. Other humans could wait for them until they came back. As they walked further away from the others, some of them commended our hero. His negotiation really worked with an angel. They now wondered what kind of rewards he would get next. Among the people who stared at Ryumin back was young Min. Our hero felt the gaze and returned the favor. This confused young Min, and he wondered if there was something he was not getting. But then Ryumin continued walking while having a grin on his face. Meanwhile, these two had already covered a considerable distance away from the other participants. They were now inside the forest. The angel then commanded our main character to walk closer to her since she was getting tired of checking if he was still with her. In the back of her mind, she was already belittling the humans. She thought that this race needed to be yelled at before they understood things. She also branded them as greedy and stupid. While walking, she thought that there was really nothing she could do about the rewards because she was not even the one who set them. And since she thought that our hero had become too greedy, she planned to teach him a lesson. Right behind that rock was the place where the system couldn't detect them, so she wanted to kill him when they reached that point. The angel knew that there would be consequences if the higher-ups found out that she killed one of the participants because of her personal reasons. But right now, she was just too annoyed not to act. And to make sure that this would be a flawless plan, she isolated Ryumin so there would be no witness. This angel had this maniac smile as she was getting too excited. She thought that this human should have just kept quiet. She then turned around to check if he was still there. She also asked what kind of rewards he was hoping to get. But as she fixed her gaze on Ryumin, all she saw was a fist heading at an extreme speed toward her face. And the satisfying punch landed fair and square. No matter if you are an angel or even a god, those who show an attitude should be taught a lesson. This holy being turned into a holy one in an instant. She exclaimed in pain and surprise. Angel stumbled and fell, grabbing her face in pain. She couldn't recover from the shock, not the pain. She couldn't believe how this could have happened. How this human bastard dared to hit her. She soon realized what had happened to her. She clenched her teeth furiously and rose to her feet, screaming what a despicable humane bastard he was. However, as soon as she turned her head, there was no one in the place where the man had been a moment ago, just falling leaves. She couldn't believe that he had disappeared. Ryumin did not waste a second and was already approaching her from behind. He knew well how to deal with angels. He grabbed the angel tightly by the wing. Before she could turn her head, he grabbed her neck with his other hand. The angel started screaming for him to wait and not to harm her and stop now. But Ryumin ignored her screams and started to break her wing. She held in pain, but Ryumin, with a stone face, continued his work surrounded by feathers flying in all directions. There was a terrible cracking sound, the sound was chilling, and the angel's mouth opened wide in horror and pain. So she lost her first wing, and golden blood spurted out in all directions. Ryumin felt that he was bored even now because he had done it dozens of times and always with the same result. At her screams, he answered her irritably, "Stop being such a crybaby." And then he threw back the broken wing and grabbed the other one. He was determined to break both wings so that the angel could not escape. She cried out in pain again. As he ripped off the second wing and another stream of golden blood sprinkled the clearing, he told her that she would definitely not be able to escape now. And then mockingly asked her how it was. "It hurts, doesn't it?" She, trembling with pain and clenched her teeth, replied that it obviously hurts. Ryumin explained to her that if he didn't do anything about it, in 5 minutes, she would be the only asking him such obvious questions and making her annoying taunts. She was desperate for him if he was crazy and what he was even talking about. She was ready for any lie to save her life and was going to play the role of an innocent angel. But she didn't have a chance. He knew all about her and lifted one of his broken wings, revealing a dagger hidden in the feathers, a dagger she would try to kill him with if she could. To this, she could answer nothing and a stunned expression froze on her face. This was just another piece of evidence, and he'd said he knew it. Angel still tried to justify that she didn't know what he meant by killing and that she never had any plans to do anything like that. He saw right through her and told her that there was no point in lying to him since he could tell a lie just by looking at her face and addressed her by the name Burial. Horror and fear were reflected on her face. She didn't understand how an ordinary man could know her name. Ryumin replied that there was no point for her to know how he knew, and started pulling out the dagger he had chosen as his first prize from his inventory. She asked in horror, what was he doing, and why, in the name of all that was holy, would he need a weapon? He looked at his dagger and asked didn't she understand. He said nothing, but she knew she was about to die on this spot. Although fear crept into her heart the moment she was caught, Burial's pride remained unshaken. She shouted furiously to him that he was crazy and she would blow his head off right now with a snap of her fingers if he didn't stop. Ryumin looked at her with a smile and replied that she could no longer use this killing ability. The moment her weakness was discovered, Burial was at a loss for words and could only grit her teeth furiously. But then she exploded with threats. "Do you really think you can survive after that? Of course, my colleagues won't just stand by and watch." Ryumin was absolutely not frightened by these threats. He continued to clench his dagger and asked what colleagues. "Don't you know that all angels are selfish beings who have no interest in others, not even their own race? Whether you live or die, None of them will care. Burial's face reflected despair as she realized the danger she was in. She began to beg him to wait, for he would gain absolutely nothing from killing her. Ryumin replied that she had had enough of this useless talk because she didn't know everything. But she did not calm down and convinced him that if he killed her, he would regret it and would not be able to return home. This was her last desperate argument. But it didn't work either because Ryumin knew that the system itself would automatically return them home after a while. Beru was once again shocked at how he knew all this. But she tried to convince him that she would give him all the information he wanted only if he gave her a chance. But he was not relentless and approached her with his dagger raised, telling her that he didn't need it. He also added that if he wanted information, he would torture her until he knew everything he needed to know. The ecosystem of her species, her purpose, and the fact that she was no more than a pawn playing the role of a guide in the game. Burial was only able to reply in horror, "What?" Ryumin didn't hesitate any longer, and Burial's eyes widened as his dagger pierced her chest. She only managed to let out her last scream, and when the dagger pierced, her body shook, and she fell to the ground. From her corpse on the ground flowed golden blood. But this sight did not interest our hero at all. After all, an information window appeared in front of him, which said that the angel had been defeated. And he was the first player to do so. For this, he received the title, the first angel slayer, and was rewarded with the item Angel's Blood, as well as Rune of Slaughter, which increased his characteristics against sacred creatures. All of this was due to the fact that he was, as expected, the first to kill an angel among all players. Then there was a notification that the rune he received was automatically implanted into the player's body. After using it, the rune scattered in his hands, burning with golden light. After that, another window appeared congratulating him for obtaining the title of First Angel Slayer, which allowed him to double his parameters when he fought sacred entities. Ryumin recalled that he first learned about this award when he decided to take revenge on an angel on his 13th attempt. The Rune of Slaughter gave him the ability to increase all of his stats by 1% every time he killed a target. A maximum of 100% could be accumulated, and this effect lasted until the end of the current round. Each of these three rewards was comparable to a unique item. Ryumin thought that if the angels found out that he had already obtained such a rune after the first round, they would definitely be shocked. But then he looked carefully at his inventory, and took out another reward from there, which was the main reason for killing an angel. It was angel blood. It was a unique consumable item that allowed you to change your class to Reaper after reaching level 10. In this game, all players can choose a class after gaining level 10. There are more than 30 different classes in total, which can be easily changed while playing the game. To do this, you just need to get a class change item. It's usually acquired naturally through hunting or fulfilling conditions. More of these items can be scattered around the location, and they can be picked up during the mission. But there are exceptions to all this. For example, when a class was changed to some unique class that could only be obtained by one player under special circumstances, like the priest class, it could not be changed. Of course, the unique classes were on a completely different level from the regular classes. They gave bonus stats, advanced runes, skill sets, and so on. In short, they were perfectly good. Ryumin opened his inventory and decided that it was time to use the special reward selection box that he received as a reward for first place in completing the first quest. A window appeared in front of him, offering him the choice of one of the following rewards: 3 times more experience in the second round, 2,000 gold, or information about the second round. For our protagonist, the choice was obvious because he did not need gold and information, and to activate the Reaper class he needed to quickly reach the 10th level. So he chose the first item, and the system immediately notified him that he would start the second round with a buff that would be applied automatically. He looked at the vanishing body of the angel at his feet and realized that this attempt was his last, so he couldn't turn back now. He had to get stronger in every way, and that was necessary to win this damn game. With a cold stare, he looked down at the corpse of the angel. The golden blood that splattered on the ground began to vaporize, dissolving into the air. Soon, the angel's body crumbled into ashes, leaving no trace behind. This was a natural process for spiritual creatures like angels. Their bodies disappeared with them after a certain amount of time. Just as suddenly as it had started, round 1 ended. Of all the participants, exactly half survived, both in their area and in the entire game. The participants were congratulated on their survival and warned when round 2 would begin, exactly 1 month later. Their